All right. So, what you're going to do this time is we're going to start with Audacity as usual. And we want to look at some diphthongs. So, I'm going to open, I've got it in my recent files here, diphthong speech.wave. And this is up for you if you want to play along as well. While this goes on, you can download that and test yourself with it as well. Okay, so let's take a listen to this really quickly. Certainly elsewhere my due allowance at. The address farther 6-hearted hundred towards husband. Our securing off occasion remember daughter replying? So that's like complete garbage. But there's some things that I want to draw your attention to. The first one is right around here. Certainly elsewhere my due allowance at. Allowance. Due allowance. Due allowance at. Due allowance at. Due allowance. 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 Okay, so we've highlighted the word allowance. This shouldn't be a surprise to you, but there is a diphthong in there. It's ow. So it goes from ah to oo, sort of, right? I mean, you know that they don't quite start and end in exactly the same place, but it's close to ow, to ah and oo. So what we want to do is we want to take a look at the spectrogram in this portion that I've highlighted. All right, so what do we want to do if we want to see that portion a little bit better? If you are saying go up here and go to spectrogram settings, then you're absolutely right. I want to go to a Mel scale. And we'll click OK. And there we go. That's a little bit better. Let's also zoom in just a little bit. Okay, that's pretty good. So now you can see here that there is, let's play this one more time. Allowance. So you can see the movement of these formants, right? We've got one formant right here. And we've got our F2 probably right here. So these are both ah and oo. They're not going to have super high second formants. And they should have somewhat high first formants. So it looks like ah and then oo. We've got some lip rounding, so it should go allowance. Allowance. So we're going to actually go ah, oo, ah. Allow ants. And you can actually kind of see that here, that it starts a little higher, dips down, and it comes back up. Here we've got our second formant that kind of runs up like this. We can make this a little bit more obvious if we go into our spectrogram settings again. And let's change our bandwidth. That might be a little too much, actually, because now we can actually see all of the individual harmonic partials, which is more resolution than we need. Let's go to 2048. That might be a little bit better. Okay. That is a little bit better. You can still see all of the individual harmonic partials. You can see how they're not changing. The fundamental frequency is not changing here. But remember, brightness corresponds to how intense that signal is. So you can see that as we go from ah, or ah, ooh, like that, allowance, that we've got, this is very robust, I guess is what I want to say. This maybe third harmonic right here would be our first formant. It's really robust, but then it drops down to the second harmonic, and that becomes a robust one. This third harmonic becomes this little weedy little thing right here, and then it pops back up, and you can kind of see that our second formant is riding up and then back down. So allowance, and it might pop back up there. We can't really tell. Okay, so that is our diphthong. Now, there is another one that I want to show you as well. Let's go back to our setting that we were in before. There we go. Let's see where that other one was. The address farther 6-hearted 100 towards husband. Are securing off occasion remember daughter replying? The replying? Okay, so we want to look at the I in replying. And actually it's going to be another one. We've got kind of two diphthongs going on. One that's actually a diphthong and the other is kind of an incidental. So we're going to go from I, which is e, and then we've got an ing on the end, so it's going to be I-ing. We'd expect the E that's at the end of the I to turn into more of a, it goes higher than it should because then it's going into the ing for replying. So it should go up to where we expect the E to actually be. All right, so like last time, let's zoom in on this word here. I don't actually want, there we go. So we'll play it really quickly. Playing. All right, so I think in this occurrence, we've actually got some melding of these two F1s right here. And this is our F2, because it should go, our first formant should decrease as it goes from A to E. This should drop way down. And the second formant should shoot way up. So from A to E, the second formant should be up here in about the 2000 hertz range, which is right here. So this is not F2, even though it kind of looks like it. This is actually a melding of F1 right here. So we've got the I-ing and then I-ing going this way as well. All right, so that's about all we can do with Audacity. Again, this is kind of where it loses its functionality. So, well, let's take a look. If we change our spectrogram settings to 2048, little more obvious. We can see these a little bit better. We can actually see that the fundamental frequency is rising a little bit here as well. And that could make things a little funky with this. You know what? You can actually see the second fundamental, the first formant a little bit better as it comes down. This is getting even more powerful. It's pretty powerful here, but it's getting even more powerful here. And then you can see that this one continues up to here. But anyway, this could make it a little wonky because our F1, our F0, our fundamental frequency is actually increasing. So if the fundamental frequency is increasing, but the first formant is decreasing, they're almost fighting against each other. So that can create some weirdness. Okay, let's move over to Praat. And let's also make sure that I'm still recording. Yes. Okay. Oh, that's going to look weird. Okay. So we are going to open, read from file. We want to find diphthong speech. That's it. All right. And we want to view and edit. So remember, it might be the case that yours looks like this. The way that I've got mine looking a little bit different is I have gone to formants at the top and I've told it to show formants. Bloop, just like that. Okay, so let's zoom in. Allowance is what we're looking for in the first speech sample. It could be this. Let's take a listen. Why is it not playing back? This is ridiculous. Oh, you guys actually may have been hearing that. Sorry about that. Okay, so we've got the L in there as well, which we don't really want. And we've got the N as well. I'm pretty sure this is the N right here. There's no formant frequencies, so we can assume that that is going to be our N. This noisy looking signal here is probably the S from allowance. It looks like noise. It's dark and there's a lot of energy at all frequencies, so I'm going to assume that that's the S. This is the N. So I think we're going to click here and drag back the L. Oh, it kind of almost looks like a vowel because you do have, there is some space, right? So there's an open vocal tract, so you will be getting some formant frequencies out of that. So it's a little bit harder to just be able to eyeball it, but my guess is it's going to be right around here. That's pretty good. So now we have awa is essentially what we've got here. All right. So what you can see from our from these speckle drawings here is that we've got the first formant right here. Ow. So ow. As we go from ah to oo, this should be dropping because we've got lip rounding, and that makes sense. So it goes, it's up a little, it drops to just a little bit more. And then our second formant, which we know that the second formant is a little bit more sensitive to speech, is showing us more undulation here. Or it's not more sensitive to speech. I shouldn't say that. I should say that it's more obvious. If you look at the second formant, there's more changes in the second formant. Okay, let's actually see what the formant is. So let's get the first formant. Well, you know what? Here's a thing that happens. If you get a diphthong, you're going to get the average formant frequency. So this C, it says mean F1 in the entire selection that I've got, which is 545 essentially. But is that true for all of these different sounds? Probably not. So let's cut this a little bit more. Now that actually sounds like ah. So let's get our formant there. The first formant is 636. All right. Let's keep that. I wonder if it'll overwrite if I keep that. Now let's go from here to here. Getting closer. Oh, oh, oh. So now it's in the ooh stage, right? It's kind of like an oh, oh, or maybe oh. Ow. Yeah, probably closer to an O. So ow. Oh. Okay. So we want to get the formant again. Oh, it overwrote my thing. Okay. So it was 636, I think, and now it's 506 for our first formant. So you can see that they're definitely different from each other. We can also look at the bandwidth, which you guys know about now. So we can go to formant first bandwidth is 323 hertz. So that's quite a wide bandwidth. Our second formant is, oh, that's an easy one to remember, 1111. And the bandwidth for that one is 192 hertz. It's a little bit smaller. Okay, so let us jump back to the ah portion, which was about here. Yeah. We'll get our first formant again, 634. And the bandwidth is 312. That's actually about pretty close to what the other one was. Let's look at our second formant, 1312, much higher than 1111. And let's look at the bandwidth of that as well, 73. So that's a much narrower bandwidth than the 192 that we saw at the other one. So we can see that the formants are changing and the bandwidth is changing. Now, this diphthong is not the most obvious. Let's find replying. And luckily I know that it's out here at the end, so we don't have to listen to it 1,000 times. Blank. Okay. We'll cut off the P. So you see this dark band of noise right here? It's really dark right here. You can see that there's a really massive wave, like a pressure wave, and that is the P. So anything that's like a B, a P, something that has a high plosive value is going to create this type of signature, this type of acoustic signature. Just the same way that an S and an H look like noise, which now I can't find a good one for you. Maybe right here? Let's see what this looks like. So this should be a plosive. Well, this plosive carries on. This could be noise, and then this looks like it's noise as well. Let's test that out. Cajun. So I was right about this one. This is a zh. So that's another one of those noisy sounds, like a s, sh, zh. It's actually a voiced sh sound. And then this, however, I was wrong about. It does last quite a while, but it's a k. So this demarcation here should have clued me in that this is a more of a plosive sound and not a noisy signal. What's really kind of hard to tell is that a k does have, it's kind of a melding of a plosive and a noisy signal, because you start with that k, you know, that you've held the air in and then you're letting it escape, but as you let the air escape, you're making it kind of a fricative. So you go k like that. And so you end up with something that looks a little bit like a plosive and also like a noisy fricative sound. Let's make sure I'm still recording. Yes, we're good. Okay. And then this is our zh right there. And we can tell that is a noisy signal. There's none of that stark difference between no noise and full noise. This looks like it should be another noisy signal as well. We can check that out. Sounds like an F to me.
Off.
Off.
Okay.
Okay. So anyway, these are the kinds of skills you'll learn. Aren't you excited? So, all right. So we've got plying right here. This is our P sound. And then we're going to have the L right here. Now, remember what I was saying before is this has essentially no formants in this P. It's trying, Praat is trying to find a formant here, but it's all over the place. And that makes sense. It's just a P. It's just an explosion of air. In the L, we actually do see something like formants. It's a voiced sound, and there's an open vocal tract as well, so that makes sense. But what we really want to focus on are the vowels. Okay, so that's pretty good right there. I-E is what it sounds like to me, and that's exactly what it should be. I-E. Alright, so let's talk about this really quickly first. One thing that we see is our first formant is up slightly from A, and then as it goes to E, it drops significantly. Down here like this. Our second formant is down here really close to the first, and then it shoots way up. And that's exactly what it should do, is it goes from an A to an E. Now this one is very obvious. We can compare it to that ow that we looked at before, and this is very obvious. So let's break it into its 2 or possibly 3 components that we can find. Okay, so we know that this is I. In fact, it's I-ing. And this right here sounds a lot like an ah to me. There might be a little bit of an E starting. Okay, now that's an ah. If I snipped this out and I put it into between a B and a T, it would sound like bot, right? So let's take a look at the formant. First formant is 676. We'll check the bandwidth just for fun. 137. And 1200. 676 and 1200. You can take a look at this bandwidth too. 43. Pretty narrow. All right, 676. And I forgot the second one. 1200. How could I forget that? 676 and 1200. Now let's find the I, or the E. Almost an S sound there. Getting into an I. There's an E. I, maybe a little, somewhere between an I and an E. Perfect. So now let's take a look at our formats. First formant is 381. That's 300 hertz, roughly, lower than our first formant for the A. Bandwidth, just for fun, 211, a little bit narrower. Our second formant, remember it was 1200. Now it is 1956, so it's almost 800 hertz higher. And let's check the bandwidth. 92. It was 40 something in the other one. So that's changing along with the formant frequency. And I would say that you also noticed, if you think back to that other one, allowance, we noticed that the bandwidths were much wider there. And it was actually a lot harder to understand. I was kind of mushy on that one. This one's a lot more crisp and clear. And yeah, that's much more crisp and clear than allowance. And that makes sense that our bandwidths that we're seeing here are a lot narrower. Remember that a narrower bandwidth is going to lead to better perception on our part, better recognition of what's going on, more crisp and less muffled sound. So
Flying.
once again, that's plying. So what I have for you to do this week is I have another wave file. It's called diphthong speech assignment. I want you to open that, and I want you to find one diphthong. I want you to identify what the two vowels are that make up that diphthong, 2 or 3 if you find another one like I-ing or ow-ence. So 2 or 3 diphthongs. I mean, one's really a diphthong, the I and the ow. The other one is a diphthong because we've got it up against another speech sound. So I'm not trying to tell you that there's like multiple types of diphthongs, but acoustically, you know what I'm talking about. So identify in the speech sound or in the speech sample one diphthong that you want to look at, and then identify what the two vowels are that make up that diphthong. Hunt through the speech sample and try to find an example of at least one, but maybe two. I'd like both of the vowel sounds, but I know that you may not be able to find both. So if you do I-ing, you're not getting this one, so you can't do replying, but maybe that's in there again. There's another I. Find the end of the I-ing, so get the E at the end of I, and then I want you to find an E just by itself. So say you had replying and beat. So I'd want you to look at the vowel in the second half of the I right there. So look at that E. I want you to look at the E in beat. Then I want you to also look at the ah part of I, and also then maybe if you found bot. So I want you to look at the diphthong and the two sounds that make it up. Tell me what the formants are for both of those. Break your diphthong into 2 parts. The most obvious part of those, so the ah and the e. Tell me what the formants are for those, and then tell me how they compare to the ah and the e that you found in isolation, so in a non-diphthong environment. All right, and if you couldn't find both of those vowels in the speech sample, note that in there, and that's okay. You're not going to lose points if you can't find it because I didn't give you enough of a speech sample. So that is your assignment. You'll be able to find that in exactly where you're listening to this. So just scroll down and you'll find those files. All right, good luck, and I'll talk to you soon.